where I'll be able to capture what they select, right? So I've done that. There's more to this one because I'm eventually going to display like a value, but let's just see how this works first. Well, it doesn't work out. Let's format it and then see how it works. Okay, so I'm going to right click on this one for trade-in and format this control. Some boxes have more than, some form controls have more things you set than others. This doesn't have a whole lot of things you need to set. Basically, we just need to set the cell link, which is, remember, the capture cell, the cell that captures their response. So all I need to do is set the cell link, and I'm going to set it over here to 014. Okay, that's all. I just need a place to capture their response right there in 014. I'm going to right click on the down payment one, format it, and when I say that, the only thing I have to set is a cell link, which I'm going to put to 015. That's all. I just want a place that will capture the user's response. So if both of those are working now, when you check this, over there you'll see true or false, true or false, true, false, true, false, based on whether they select it or don't select it. Everybody's checkbox is working? Okay, well, that's obviously not all that we're doing, because if you look back at the PowerPoint, you'd see that there are parameters associated with how much they're going to have as down payments.
I noticed that it didn't show anything until you clicked it.
Yeah, it's like...
But someone that would not be interested in trading in, wouldn't they not click it at first? So how would you get a false or true?
So if they don't select it initially, then it is just set. It depends on if we use it in which we are actually going to use it in an if statement. But we're going to get to look at a, oh, I didn't do it. No, we're doing it right after this. Okay. There is something where we're going to look at what happens if things aren't selected. I don't have that one in the example. Let's look at that one. When we get to that point after we have it all set up, let's look at what happens if a selection's never been made. Okay, we'll see what that does. Because we are going to go back and do that with what if a selection was never made up here. What does it do? Okay, well, let's finish this, but hold that thought. If I don't remember to do it, tell me to do it. All right, so I'm going to go in here. Okay, somebody will ask me this later, but I'm telling you, everywhere you see borders around cells, I'm just putting in borders. I'm simply doing that so that you will see. It's just a format. I'm just putting them in there so you'll see where I'm putting different formulas at different times. Okay, it just makes it all stand out nicely. So I put borders around those 3 cells. That's all. That's all. So here's the thing about the trade-in. If you look back at the parameters that go with the trade-in, they have the trade-in values can vary from 3,000 to 6,000 in increments of 1,000. The instructions tell you on both of these, after you've got the checkboxes in, it says use spin buttons to determine the trade-in and down payment, the actual percent for the down payment or amount for the trade-in. So they want you to use spin buttons. Okay, back to our toolbox of form controls. The spin button is the 4th one over on the first row. There's a spin button. I'm going to attach it right here. Okay. And I am going to copy it and put it here. Because again, I really like for these things to be the exact same shape and size. Would you get points off of that? No, of course not. It's just my neurotic nature to want to do that. Okay, so I just put 2 spin buttons in. Just put 2 spin buttons in.
Did you just bold the cell in front of it like the outline, or did you do something too?
I just outlined it with format. I just format, just the format that does right here. I just put borders around it. And I'm going to do that around all the cells that have formulas in them so they'll stand out, so you'll notice what they are. That's all. All right. So far so good. Got your spin buttons in, but they don't do anything because we haven't done it. We haven't set them up. Okay. So here we go. I'm going to right click on this first spin button and say format this control, and it has a lot more interesting stuff we can do with it than we could do with just a checkbox. Remember, and of course this is coming from the PowerPoint, there are parameters that go with the down payment. Yes?
spin button was the ActiveX control, right?
No, no active, never ActiveX. Yeah, whatever you do, never choose the ActiveX one or it will not work. Okay, yeah, so none of them will be ActiveX. So here is our trade-in parameters. Here are our trade-in parameters. 3,000 is a minimum, 6,000 as a maximum in 100 increments. And that came from the PowerPoint. Okay, I didn't make that up just now, made it up at some point. But anyway, there are the parameters for the trade-in. I want to capture the amount that they choose. And I've already got a label here for trade-in. Do they have one or not? So now I'm going to put here how much. Okay, so that's going to be my link cell for this, for them choosing how much. Okay, so I'm going to link this to P14. Does that make sense? It just stays in line. Kind of logical, right? Okay. All right. So I did fix that. Now watch this spin button. Sorry. Watch this spin button. Watch that value. 3,100, 3,200, all the way up to 6,000. I can keep pressing. It's not going to go any higher than 6,000. I can take it down. Keep pressing. It's not going to go any lower. It works, right? Everybody's working? Not helping the user a lot, though, is it? Okay, because the user can't even see this. This is behind the scenes. Remember, the user doesn't see that. So over here in this cell right here, I want to reference that behind the scenes cell. Okay, I want to reference that so the user can actually see it. I also want it to look good, so I'm going to format it. Now the user can see what's happening, and the user can pick however much they want to put as a down payment, right?
You just press cell reference equals.
But is there anything wrong with what you're seeing right now on the screen? The way it is right there, is there anything wrong with that?
Yes.
What's that? No, after you say yes, then you have to tell me what it is. Yes, there is. Yes is the correct answer. Now, what is it that's wrong with this right now? Trade-in's not checked. Okay. Now, that's not the same as the question you were asking, which we're still going to come back to. Okay. We'll do this one first. Trade-in is not checked, and the trade-in value is showing up. We don't want that. We don't want that. So around this P14, we want to specify whether that should actually be being displayed over here or not, based on whether or not they choose it. So we'd use what kind of function?
If.
Just an if statement. So if, and we check this cell, O14, because O14 will contain a true or false based on whether they had checked it or not checked it, okay? Then we would display P14. Otherwise, let's just display a 0. You'll see why I'm doing that later, but let's just display a 0 if not. So therefore, so you see a 0 here. Does that mean the spin button doesn't work when they do this? No, actually, if you look over there, it's working just fine, okay? But they're not supposed to see it unless they check this. Then they can see it. Make sense?
What's the reference over there?
This is our capture cell. That's the cell that captures what this spin button is doing. And the spin button is working perfectly fine, even if it's not being displayed over here.
How did you get the 0? I get a dash.
Formatting. I used a currency, and you probably used accounting. Accounting will do a dash. Currency will do a 0.
Oh, yeah.
That's not a big deal.
I know what we're doing there, but what's that?
What's that?
Yeah.
You mean the whole thing?
No, just that 3,200 cells, right? P14.
The P14 is capturing what the user selects when they use this spin button.
And how did you get that?
That I always get those by going into this control and setting up my cell link. And every form control has to have a cell link. Every form control has to link to a cell. You've got to capture the user's response.
C13 to that P13? Is that what you did afterwards?
Then after that, yes, right here, I linked it to P14. But then I realized I didn't want to just link it to P14. I only wanted it to show up if this is true. So at first I just put P14 in there. Then I said, oh, I don't want it to always display. I only want it to display P14 if they check the box. Yes.
So I cannot see the false or true. Is there anything that I might have done wrong?
On this trade-in right here, right click, look at the format control. You have to have a link cell right there.
I just haven't checked it.
No, I did, and it still doesn't.
You have an 014 link cell there? You may have to look at that later. So hold that thought, and then maybe Anki can go over right now. He's working on another one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we got to keep moving because there's a whole bunch of important stuff that comes with this. Let's right-click on the other spin button and set it up for the down payment percent. Okay, so when I right-click on this, okay, when I right-click on this, you definitely need to see this. This is important. Okay. It's supposed to go from, if you look at the parameters, 1% to 10% in 1% increments. Okay. The number for 1% is, the numeric value of 1% is 0.01, isn't it? Numeric value of 10% is 0.1. Numeric value of incremental change of 1% would be 0.01. Okay. So we put in there, because we know that's 1%, 10%, 1% increments. We link this over here to P15, yeah, because it's kind of all keeping in line with my little logical self here. Okay. All right. And now we test this. And when we test this, you see nothing happening over there. Okay. Right-click and go back into this format control, figure out what it was we did wrong. Why is this not working? And you get this. This does not happen in other things that I know of. There may be some somewhere, and I'm just not aware of it. There's a lot of things where decimal values work. This is not one of them. The form control on these, the parameters, these ranges, won't take decimal values. Well, that's an interesting but not impossible problem to deal with. So all we were going to go in and do is just put it to 1, from 1% to 10%, and 1. You know, we'll have no decimal values in there now. So go from 1 to 10 in steps of 1. Okay. So I will see that it's working now. So you can see it over there, 1, 2, 3. Well, I just clicked off of them. All the way up to 10, all the way down to 1. Okay, so great, it's working. So I go to display it over here, which I would want to do. Now the user can see it. And again, it's working fine. But if I choose to format this cell as a percent, I get that. Which was the whole reason that I tried to put it in as a 0.01, a 0.1, and a 0.01. I mean, I knew that. I know that about numbers and percents. I know that. This is why I tried to do it like this in the first place. But I am going to have to correct this problem for the user. For the appearances of the user, I'm just going to need to correct this problem by doing what?
Divide by 100.
Yeah, divide it by 100. And now it looks right to the user, but it works, which, it works, which it was not going to do if I had decimal places in it. I didn't have a choice but to do this. But again, this isn't checked, this is showing up. Put an if statement around it. If, this is going to, of course, be either true or false, but if it was true, then we would do that P15 divided by 100 calculation. Otherwise, we'd put a 0 in there. Did you ever get your trues and falses to work? Right here. I don't know anybody's names. So, did you get your trues and falses to work?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, good. I was going to say, because Ann could come up and try to help you if you didn't, but I'm glad you got them working. Okay, so obviously that true and false will make this where it's going to show 0% until they choose it, then they can see it. Okay, before we go on with the rest of it, we certainly could wait until clear to the end to clean some of these things up. But before we go any further, if you had a person, oh, no, let me do one more calculation, then we'll go clean up the stuff I'm talking about. that's the down payment percent, but we're gonna need a dollar value or we're not gonna easily be able to come up with loan amounts and all this kind of stuff. So we actually have to turn that into a dollar value. So right here in the cell, right below the percent, I'm gonna take that percent of our net sales price. And the net sales price is your sales price minus any trade-in that you might have done. So in this cell, C16, if you're in the same place I am, you need to take your sales price minus your trade-in. Okay, that's net sales price. Okay, we'll use that again at another point in time. But anyway, that's your net sales price. Multiply that by the down payment percent, and that will give you the dollar value of your, I'm going to use currency to make it look good. That'll give you the dollar amount. And if you trade it in, you know, that of course changes because that made your net sales price different. You put down less or you put down more.
Can you show that formula again?
Yes, this is the net sales price, which would be sales price minus the trade-in, okay, that multiplied by whatever you chose as how much you wanted to put as a percent for your down payment. Okay. So that one wasn't form control, it was just a little calculation that we needed to make to actually get the dollar value in there. Now, back to what I was saying before. Next user walks up to this system. Do we necessarily want them to be swayed towards a Nissan that's mid-priced and, you know, already have values in here? Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe we want to have it kind of cleared out. Now, I just want you to see what it would look like, though, if it was cleared out right now. If I took the brand and the model out, okay, I can go over here to this area and just delete that information out of there. So I've cleared brand and I've cleared model, okay, which means index can't work. Because index is looking for that row, that column. And oftentimes, of course, when you put something into Excel and you get an error message, just because you made a mistake, you know, you need to fix it, okay? But that's not always the case. Sometimes you get error messages because at this moment in time it doesn't work. It doesn't have all the information that it needs to work. It doesn't have a match maybe for a VLOOKUP, and then you just need to go in and say, well, you know, do something different if there's no match. Okay, so in other words, what I want this formula to do is do something different if it produces an error message. Okay, because if this produces an error message, I don't want it to show that. I mean, somebody walks up to this. I mean, even if these things are off, okay, somebody walks up to this, well, see, and anything that uses something that has an error will have an error, you know? So somebody walks up and it looks like the system's broken, it's not working, you know? We don't want that. We don't want people to look at it and think that. So what I want to do right here in this cell, okay, is to use a function that's called if error. And this is what it says. If what you would do in this cell would produce an error, then do this instead, okay? And so what I want to have it do, in front of this, I'm going to say if error. If this index produces an error, what would I rather have it do? Well, one thing I could have it do is display a 0 instead. Okay. So if that index function we know is working, we knew it was working, okay? If it produces an error ever, then have it display a 0 instead. And then that clears up that problem. I can clear it out without having a problem with this. Okay. Now, that didn't. Let's do something. Let's do the one that you said. Let's put something back in for this. Well, they haven't done this yet. Well, I haven't done any of these yet. Let's do it all. So interestingly enough, that function of if this is true, display this, otherwise this, I don't know which one's actually working. It may think this is true. Let me do something. No, it doesn't think it's true. It's that, yeah. It must think it's a false. If nothing's there, it's taking it as if it were false, it would appear. Yeah. Okay, but I can clear all that out anyway. Okay. There was an interesting statement on the PowerPoint, though, and it said this. After we did these checkboxes and stuff, it said hide these $% if it's not selected. Well, we didn't hide it. we turned it into zeros, which is okay, and it might be perfectly fine for your purposes. But let's say you didn't want anything there. You really, when you say clear this out, you wanted to clear it out. Yes?
How do you clear like one cell at once?
Highlight them all and press delete. Like I was
Oh,
doing
it
all of
doesn't do that
these.
on my phone, just wondering.
I was just doing this, press and delete, and get rid of like all the background stuff. Okay. One thing that I could do combines a couple of things that we've already used. I could conditionally format these so that if they have zeros in them, instead they would show something else. And the something else I wanted to show is actually nothing. I want it to do nothing. So I could conditionally do this if they're zero. So that's the conditional part of it. Use a custom number format. Remember how custom number formats, I put anything on top of a number? Well, I could put nothing on top of a number. So I'm going to take and select, using the control key, all 4 of those cells right there. All those cells that have zeros in them. I am going to go into conditional formatting and say highlight these if they, it's not highlight, but do something to them if they are equal to 0. If they are equal to 0, now I'm going to pick the format. The format I'm going to pick is a custom number format. Remember right here where I did anything in quotation marks? I'm going to do absolutely nothing in quotation marks right now. But yeah, those are really tiny, you can't see them. But it's little quotation marks, a few spaces in there.
You can't click anything for anything that you type it. Can you go back? Sorry.
Yeah. I had to go right in here.
Or, and then in general.
And I had to
Okay.
set up whatever it was I wanted to set up, which in this case was the nothing. It's clear. Now, again, I could have waited till clear to the end to do this and we could have cleared all of them, but I'm just kind of demonstrating it along the way. Okay, demonstrating what it looks like along the way to do little things here and there. But as soon as a person starts picking stuff, they get a price. They get a trade-in. They choose how much they want for a trade-in. See, I didn't have anything in there because it was a 0, so 0 here it is nothing. I don't know why it just takes it as a false, but that's interesting. Okay, is it working to this point?
You
Yeah.
formatted the sales price part too, right? That cell?
I did these 4 right here, those 4. I formatted them conditionally that if they were 0, they would show nothing.
So you did conditional formatting?
The conditional formatting, and then the format I chose was a custom number format where I put spaces, side quotations. So what's the next step? Oh, now it's, okay, we got a little bit of easy stuff temporarily. We're going to put in taxes, then we're going to put in fees, and then we're going to figure out what the loan amount is. So taxes, fees, and loan amount. Right. So, okay, all I've done right now, well, let me do the boxes, and then I'll show you what I've done. I have a place for taxes, a place for fees, and a place to calculate the loan amount. These are not going to be format controls. Okay? They're just going to be calculations that we do. I am going to store the information for how much the taxes and fees are. I'm going to store that information right there. That information was given to me on the slide that has all the parameters on it. And what it said is that taxes are 6.25%, which they are in the state of Texas, so for vehicles. So 6.25% taxes, okay. And in this particular dealership, $650 flat fees that you will also pay. Okay. So I'm storing that information here because this is where I would be working if I was working on a model. If that number changes, if that's, percentage rate changes, that's where I would change it. To display it over here for the user, well, for taxes, I'm not displaying the tax rate, I'm displaying the taxes. So again, taxes are taken, it tells you that on the PowerPoint, but taxes are on the net sales price. This is why dealers try to convince you to trade in your vehicle, even though they're not going to give you as much as you could sell it for, because they say, yeah, but you'll get the sales tax break, which is true. You do get a sales tax break. Usually doesn't make up for how much less they're giving you, but you do get a sales tax break. The sales tax is on the sales price minus the trade-in, the net sales price. Okay, that's what you pay the 6.25%. Okay, so your sales price minus your trade-in, that's what you pay 6.25% for. Now this produces an interesting number, 0.4375, which in dollars, we don't have anything that will do that for us to 4 decimal places. I could format it, but if I format it, that number's still there, isn't it? Okay. So instead I want to do what? I want to round it. And for currency purposes, I would want to round that to 2 decimal places. Because I understand that's how our monetary system works. We need to put it into 2 decimal places. Yes?
Could we just do currency and then 2 decimal places down?
If I did that, what number would still be used in calculations? This one. Because when I am actually going to do currency next. But if I do currency now, I've not changed this number. I've just changed what I'm seeing. I haven't actually changed the number. I do round because I want to actually change the number. Now I want to format it, and I will do currency and format it, but that has to happen after I've rounded it, because the number has to be right. It's actually in the cell. The fees, I'm just going to reference those fees. They're just flat fees. They don't go with anything else. Okay, so that was that. Those fees is just a reference to where the cell I have fees at. This was the taxes. And now we're going to get to the loan amount. Okay, so the loan amount, you know, I think with Excel, and this isn't a finance class, but I think it's always good to at least show some financial function. The problem is a lot of the financial functions have all kinds of finance theory to go with them, and this isn't a finance class. And so therefore, you know, one good one to pull in and incorporate is something that everybody understands already anyway, which is a payment function. We all get how that works and what you need to know to calculate a payment. You need to know your interest rate. You need to know how long you're paying it off. You need to know how much you borrowed. Okay, so that is the you know, will give us an opportunity at least to see a financial function in here. Okay, so PMT, that is the payment function. And here's what you need to, I'm not doing this yet. Oh, you guys, okay, edit this if you're taping me, because I'm like went totally off. This is not for the loan amount. That'll be when we get to the payment. Let's do the loan amount first. Okay, let's do that first. Okay, loan amount. We have a bunch of stuff to do before we get to payment. I'm just trying to jump to the end of the class. The loan amount is basically going to have, well, let's start, where would you start? You got a sales price. That's reduced by however much you choose to trade in, right? Which is also reduced by however much you choose to put as a down payment. Make sure you choose this cell, not that one. A lot of times people just kind of accidentally click this one. So that's reduced by trade-in, C13, down payment, C16, but then you have to add back in taxes and fees. Okay. That's going to give you the loan amount. Your total sales. Subtract out trade-in, subtract out down payment, add back in taxes and fees. That's going to give you the loan amount.
For fees, you just referenced 650?
Yeah, I did. I just referenced that cell over there, but I want to keep the stuff back there because that's where you, the developer of the system, would work on things. Okay. There you go. Now this next stuff is fun. Then we'll get to do the payment. Okay, what's the next thing? We're going to use horizontal scroll bars to select the loan interest rate and the term. We're going to have interest rate and term. Term will be in months. I'm going to get that in there. Okay, that is going to be over here. So I'm just doing the get it all ready stuff. All right, I did all the get it ready stuff. Put a label in here, put a box around those cells. put a background location for where I'm going to capture this. Because the way that they're doing, if you look back on here again, the way that they're doing interest rate and term is using a scroll bar. Okay, so back to our toolbox full of stuff.